Today we're going to start our sewing unit to make some soft fabric sculptures, just like this one here. Now to start off, you're going to need to choose what type of pattern you want to use for your soft sculpture. After you have decided what pattern you want, you're going to choose that paper and then cut it out very carefully on the black line. Next, you're going to need to choose your fabric. And today I have this piece of purple felt, but obviously there's a lot of different fabric choices in the world. Now, whenever you're working with fabric, it is a really good idea to not be wasteful, because fabric can actually be really expensive. So whenever I'm putting my pattern on to the fabric, I'm going to try to put it as close to the edge as possible. So instead of putting it in the middle where I'd only get one piece, if I put it over here, I actually have room to get both pieces cut out, because I'm going to need one piece for the front of my sculpture and one piece for the back. Now, as I'm cutting, I do not want my pattern to be moving around, because that will really mess up my shape. So I'm going to be using some pins to hold it down. Be very careful with the pins, because they are pointy. If you're not careful, they could poke you. And you have to kind of do a little special trick to get these pins in. I'm going to put one at the top and maybe a couple at the bottom. So when you put your pin in, you can't just poke it through one time. That doesn't hold it on very well. You're going to poke it through once and then kind of take this part and bend it back so that you can push it up again through the fabric and the paper. So I'm going to do that a couple more times so you can see. Push it down and back up. Push it down, get a good angle, down, and then kind of get your hand to bend the fabric so that you can push it back up. There we go. Okay, now when your pattern is all pinned down, you can very carefully cut it out with scissors. Be careful the scissors you choose. Fabric is a lot harder to cut than paper, so I have a large pair of fabric scissors that I'm going to use for this step. When you're done cutting out your pieces, you should have two that are exactly the same. One for the front and one for the back. Cut out carefully, because if your pieces don't match or if they're sloppy, it's going to be really frustrating for you for the rest of the entire project. So the first step is really important for you to take your time. When you're done, carefully take all of your pins and put them immediately back into your pin cushion so that you don't lose them. We're going to be learning a few different stitches today as well that we're going to be using on our soft sculpture. This page has a place to practice a running stitch and a whip stitch. The first step is you need to use a hole puncher to punch a hole on each one of these black dots. So do this step kind of carefully. Sometimes hole punchers might want to rip your paper, and if you rip through one of the holes, you won't really be able to sew it very well. You'll have to skip that ripped hole. So I'm just punching gently, and if there's still a little bit of the hole punch left on the back, that's okay. All you really need is a little part of a hole to get the thread through. So I'm going to keep going until my whole paper is punched, sort of like this. Now you're also going to need two pieces of yarn that are about arm's length. When you get your two yarn pieces, you're going to take a couple pieces of masking tape to hold your yarn in place. Okay, I'm going to start with the running stitch. So I'm just going to tape my little yarn piece right up here at the top. Now I have this whole long piece to sew with. Now when you do a running stitch, you're basically going down, up, down, up, down, up through the paper, like this. Down through the first hole, pull it all the way through, and then up through the next hole, and pull it all the way through. Down, up, down, pull it all the way through, up. It's pretty easy to stitch this way. Just make sure that you pull your yarn tight each and every time. Pull it all the way through just like so. When you're done with your running stitch, it should kind of look like a dashed line. Now the whip stitch is a lot different. Let me get my second piece of yarn taped down. So for a whip stitch, instead of going down, up, you're just going to be going up, up, up each time. And it just has a different type of look to it. I'll show you. Up, and then instead of going down, I'm going to go up through the paper again and pull it all the way through. Up and pull it all the way through. Up and pull it all the way through. Just that one there. And basically what the whip stitch looks like is the yarn or thread is whipped around the edge of your paper or fabric. So it looks a lot different than our dashed line stitch over here. When you're done with your stitches on both sides, you can trim the extra if you want, but I like to leave a little bit left so that I can tape the end down, just to make sure that my stitches don't come out. After you've taped it, you can use the center part of this paper to sketch out some different ideas for faces of your soft sculpture.